Hello everyone and welcome to the Premiere Pro, where you'll learn everything you need to know to go from a 100% beginner to a professional level video editor. We'll release at least one new tutorial every week, and if there's anything you'd like to see covered in the future, let me know in the comments. In volume 16, I showed you how to cover your edit and to cut the A-roll and B-roll together to make an assembly. This volume, we are going to show you how to pace your edit, but first we definitely have to do our new subscriber shout out. And if you want to be next, like, comment, and subscribe. That's enough of that. Okay. So basically, the next step you need to do once you have an assembly is you have to pace your edit. So you need to make sure that it's flowing, that it's feeling good, that it has a rhythm to it. And rhythm, well, that's a segue into music. So you need to make sure that your music is paced to your edit. So we have a couple tracks, and I'll just solo these here. So by the way, you ever want to just hear a couple of tracks, you don't want to hear the dialogue because you want to listen to the music, you can just hit that and you can solo the tracks. So what we want to do is kind of listen to our music, hear where the hits are, and then we want to pace our cuts to those hits and peaks and valleys. Kind of a lively sports track. I have to switch to the workspace where you can actually see my entire screen. There we go. And you saw I did that. You can have different workspaces saved, so that's a little convenient thing. I usually do dual screen, but obviously we do single for these videos, so I just switched back to editing. Anyway, let's continue. Cool. So that's a pretty hard hitting track. It's got a lot of hits, got a lot of changes, a lot going on. So that's how we want to edit it. We want to edit it with some nice changes and cuts and things to match the rhythm. So let's just lay this first bit over our song and let's see what it looks like and sounds like. Okay. So we have some nice beats there. Now, when we cut this dry, as we call it, without any music or anything else, that looked fine. You know, if you didn't have these here, right? Looks fine. But as soon as you add some music,
my name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard.
Suddenly the pacing doesn't match. So we're going to pace this. So what we want to do first, we're just going to mute this. We want to pace these first shots to those hits in the music. And basically, we need more shots than this to do that. So we conveniently, as we mentioned before, we put shots at the end of the timeline for later. So this is where we can bring some of those in. So we're just going to bring some of these over here. And we can kind of count how many hits we need. I'd like to hit that da, da, da. Well, that's 3, right? So we have one shot where we need 3. So why don't we pick 2 more from here? So there's a shot there. There's a shot there. There's a shot there. And let's look at the next shot. Okay. So what you also want to do with sequencing of shots, you don't want to do like, if you're showing the same location, you don't want to show like a wide shot, then a tight shot, then another wide shot, then a medium. You want it to almost be the order of like, if you were physically there, how you would approach it. So this shot here is like wide of the city. This is of the stadium, kind of medium-ish. That shot's a lot closer on the ground. You don't want to put that and then put a wide shot again. And then this shot's kind of same thing. So what I would say is that we could go from this shot to this shot. Nope, to this shot, to that shot. So let's try that for those 3 hits. And we're going to be shortening this, because these are very quick succession. So we want that to be the last shot, and let's find the point that we like. So let's try something like that. And this is going to be shot number 2. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it lags. And then we'll do that other shot right after. Let's see what that, and see that's getting into night. So let's see how this all paces out. So we're going to move these shots over here. We're going to kind of move around. So sometimes in editing, you'll do something, you'll kind of blow it up a little bit, and then you'll put it back together. So we have this shot here we like. We have this next shot here that we like. We have this next shot here, and then that shot on the ground. So let's see how we can time that out. Drag these over, and let's play it, and we want to find those hits. You hear that? So that's the next hit. So right about here. You can hear it right there. Right about there. And we can adjust this if we don't get it right. So we're literally just going to move this shot over to that spot. It'll just delete what's there. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so it cut right there, right? And then the next big hit, which if you look, and if you can't see it too well, we can expand this. You can see the waveform better when you're doing more audio-based editing. There's a nice little peak right there. That's because that's a big hit. So that's kind of going to be our next cut point. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to drag this clip over. And then we should have two cuts in the first two hits. See that? And there's our next one. You can see that nice big peak right there. So we're going to use our arrow. So probably about there. And we'll drag our next clip in. And let's see how this looks. So let's see that one more time. Now there's a couple hits there. We don't necessarily have to use all those because we've just done a couple quick ones. So let's decide which of those last two hits we want to use. I think the bigger one there, right there, right? That one was pretty big. The other one's not so big. So let's drag this over. So I believe we said we like, nope, not that one. This shot. So right there, you can see again, if we zoom in, it's a nice big peak there because that's a big hit. So right, I would say maybe there. Let's drag this over. Now, if you look, let's see. The other one, so this seems like a continuation of these other shots here. So maybe we switch these, right? So we're going to do this here. And that's already lined up because we already did it. Right there. And we have a nice, and that brings us right about to the right point. And we can just go expand this out and it'll cut right to our talent. So let's take a look at that. Okay. So that's some pretty nice pacing there. Now, we have this music at full volume. If you look over here at the audio meters, this is pretty high. But then we have our talent who's going to be speaking, and we won't be able to hear him over the music.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for
That's way too much. So what we have to do is we have to bring that down. So first, I actually want to get a good level in the music before we even do that, because broadcast standard is going to be like anywhere between -12 and -6. And we are almost peaking at 0. That's going to be too high. It's going to distort. Let's collapse this a little bit. So we want to get this to like -8-ish. So if we look now, so let's solo this again. Let's look at this meter. All right. So we're peaking right about at 0, maybe -1. So if you highlight the clip, press the letter G, and you can adjust the gain by a certain amount as the default. And we want to say, let's say -7. It's going to bring it down 7 decibels, which are units for measuring volume. We hit OK. You can see that waveform shrunk. Now let's listen. And if you look, now we're peaking right around -9, -8. So So that's a good level. So let's just do the same thing to the other clip here. So we're going to hit G, -7, enter, and let's see what that looks like and sounds like. And we'll get into how this transitions in a moment, but this is an important part of pacing too. So now if we look at that, this is pretty balanced. And we're not done mixing his, but this is going to be closer where we can at least hear him. So what we're actually going to do, this is the good level for when he's not talking. But once he talks, we're going to bring that way down. So what we want to do is find the point where he starts talking. We're going to hit the letter C. So I was on the arrow tool. I press C, and that gives me the cut tool. You can do it over here, or you can use the keyboard command. And that's how I was able to cut it, because what that's going to do is let me do things to this next clip, which is a continuation of this clip. It's the same clip, but you've now split it. I can do things here that won't affect this and vice versa. So that's why you want to cut. So I want to go to audio transitions in my effects. So audio transitions. I like to use constant power, and I'm going to put a transition there because I'm going to transition between two volumes. I'll zoom out a little bit, and then I'm going to go here, and I'm actually going to hover over this line here, and I'll make this a little bigger, easier to see. I'll hover over this line, click, drag it down, and let's drag it down about 10 dB and see how that sounds.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
Okay. And I'm going to solo this. Generally for broadcast, we want about anywhere from -22 to -18 for background music, so it stays out of the way of the speaking. So let's see what that by itself is peaking at. Okay, so we're at about -18. Now, again, this is not a final mix. This is just so we can hear what's going on. Once we do the final mix, we're going to be doing some compression and some other things to his dialogue that's going to make it stand out a little bit. So for now, I think we can bring it down 10, and we'll do the same thing over here. Get it to about 10. And as you see, I don't have his fine-tune control. Sometimes it's better. So if I move this up, just expand this track a little bit, and you're going to have finer tune control over this. Let's do about -10-ish. And we'll do the same thing over here. And we can do that with the gain, or we can do that with the slider, two different ways. So, okay, so we have pretty good level here. So now we're ready to really see how this starts lining up. So we're going to unsolo this and just start watching our edit. And if anything jumps out to us as what we should line up or do differently, that's when we'll make a change.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the...
So if you hear, sound like it was a little bit late, right? Getting low before he spoke. So we can just use so what I did there is I pressed the letter N, and that's giving me this tool here, a rolling edit tool. And you're going to click right in the middle, press and hold, drag it over. And that's going to just, instead of having to individually do that and re-put the transition, it's going to move everything over nicely for you. Now let's listen to it.
My name is Matt Pierpont.
So now that lower time for him to talk.
Hartford Yard Goats.
And we actually, this happens in editing sometimes. We got lucky. That just kind of timed with the music. It was about a frame off. So you know what we can do? That rolling edit tool we just talked about, we can use that. So first I'm going to unlink these because I just want to do this to the video. So I'm going to hit N again, grab that, rolling edit, and then now watch this change with that hit.
Yard Goats.
So little subtle things like this, people may not notice it consciously. Okay, so we have our B-roll here. That would be nice to line up with this hit, but if you look at the way we repaste this, remember green is when we see him on camera. This originally was covered, but we just changed this a little. So now we see him here. So we can do one of two things. We can add more B-roll, or we can kind of change the screen to decide we're going to see him. I kind of like hearing people introduce themselves before we see them. So what we're going to do first, we'll line this up with a music hit, and then we'll select some more B-roll for there. So let's listen. All right, so that's a nice hit there. You can really see it there. So we're going to use our arrow key and go right back to the beginning of the hit. Cut this here. Let's let's see what that looks like.
I was born into a family that loved baseball.
So a little dissolve there. Let's shorten that a little because it hung a little. So let's make that 10 frames.
I was born into a family that loved baseball.
So we want to cover this section here from here to here because we wanted to still have a little tease of hearing him introduce himself before we see him. So let's go back to the end of our timeline. We have a little B-roll left over. Why don't we use, that's something different than we've used and it gets us more in the park. So in sequence, that makes sense. So let's see what we can do here. So we're going to line this up. This happens in editing too. Sometimes you get lucky. This is very close. We can just expand this out. And let's see what it looks like.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
Okay. There we go.
Goats.
And I'm thinking, because we're going from like higher level day to field level night, we could use some kind of like transition because we want to show the time has passed. So what I like to do here would be like a push. So if you go into slide transitions, go to push, and it's going to actually just kind of push this frame out, right? Because now it feels like a little bit of time has passed if we do this. So if we go frame by frame, right? And because this is actually below, what we really want to do, and technically, we're not going to really use this shot, right? So we can just move this down, replace it here, and then we'll use our push, because otherwise we're not going to see the beginning of the transition. So let's do this. All right, so let's see what that looks like.
For the Hartford Yard Goats.
So now that we're transitioning in day, like the level and the time of day, it makes sense to kind of do something that moves us along, moves the story along. But it felt a little slow. Remember, we're talking all about pacing. So what we want to do, we're going to collapse that a little bit. Let's try 8 or 9 frames. So we want to do, let's zoom in so we have better control. Kind of would like to try... It will not let us try 8, so let's try 9.
Hartford Yard Goats.
And you see how that kind of times with the music too?
The Hartford Yard Goats.
I'd still like that to be a little faster. So let's try the 7. And this is editing. It's trial and error.
Goats.
There we go. See how that felt good? Okay.
Goats.
So the last thing I'd like to do is give that, it's kind of a like plain looking edge. Doesn't meld too well together. So what we can actually do, click on the transition, go to effects controls. You can give that a little border. And I usually standard like to use a white border. So I use the color picker, bottom left, zeros. That's going to get you white. Hit OK. But then you have to tell it how wide. So I usually start with about 15 and see what I like from there. Just type it in. So that looks a little thin, right? Let's try to double it, 30. It's not too bad. Let's see how that looks.
I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
There you go. So now let's just watch from the top, because now we've paced this intro pretty well.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
And if you notice, we are getting a little stuttering because this will happen. The more you get in your edit, there's more processing that your system is doing. So now might be a good time to give it a good render just so it can play back smoothly. Now we're going to see how quick this goes. If it goes too slow, I'll just cut because I'm a video editor. All right, so it's not too bad. So what I did there, sequence, it's grayed out because we're doing it. Sequence, render entire work area. That's very important because if you just render, if you have red, you hit enter, that'll render that. But if you hit enter, it will not render the yellow areas because those require like kind of a higher level of rendering. So when you go to render entire work area, it's going to get all of those yellow areas and really truly render your edit. And then as you'll see, once this is done, this is all going to play back a lot smoother. So the more layers, the more effects, the more you're doing, it's going to be harder in your processor. And eventually, you are going to want to give it a good render. The edit's getting more set, so we're not moving a lot of stuff around. So we shouldn't have to redo this too many more times. And look at that. About done. And it always hangs on that last percentage. There we go. All right, so now you'll see this will play back smoothly.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
So the next thing that jumps out to me before we do anything,
I was born into a
couple of things. So basically,
Yard Goats.
So now we have just music again. And it kind of feels like the bottom drops out because it's still very low and there's nobody speaking. So we want to do the same way we brought the music down to hear them. We want to bring this up to kind of fill this in and make it feel full. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to kind of cut beginning and the end points. We're going to move this up. And what we'll do, we know we went down about 10 dB. So if you just click this, highlight it, press G again, and we're going to press 10 because it's going to go up 10 now. Hit OK. And let this see that? So it fills it in, but that's a very abrupt. So we want to grab our cross fade again, constant power. And let's make this a little smaller and let's see how that sounds. Not too bad. So let's do it for the end. Let's run through this little sequence here.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
See how that keeps the energy up? And then we need to bring it down.
I was born into a family.
And that seemed like it came down to me a little bit late. We don't ever want it to step on him. So let's, again, our rolling edit tool, press N, click, hold right in the middle. Let's go over let's try 5 frames. Usually all it takes. Let's listen again.
I was born into a family that loved baseball. I had an
we'll keep watching until something else jumps out at us.
4 and 2 years older than me. So as soon as I was born, I was around the game and started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball.
Now, what I'd like to do here, when we're changing time and place, that's when you want to do some of the transitions that kind of clear the palette. So we always say, everything you do, there should be a reason for it, and you should be able to justify it, why you did it. So the reason we want a palette cleansing transition is he's an adult here. It's in the ballpark. We're changing time and place. We're changing to him being a kid and where he grew up. So what I'm actually going to do here, I'm going to take this because, again, green is on camera. We're never going to use this now. And if we do, there's ways to get it back. But we're probably not going to use this. So if you highlight the clip, press and hold the Alt key, push down, it's going to jump right down. And the reason I did that is because I now need to transition here, right? So there's 2 transitions that work really well for time and place changes, dip to white and dip to black. Usually in documentary types, I like dip to black. It's a little more dramatic. So we're going to grab that, drag it down here, and just see how this paces this and changes this.
I was born, I was around the game and started playing with my brother.
See that? And I felt like that was kind of quick. So why don't we drag this out? About a second usually is good for a dip to black. So let's see.
I was born into a family that loved baseball. I had an older brother, older sister, 4 and 2 years older than me. So as soon as I was born, I was around the game and started playing with my brother.
So do you see how now it had a feel, it had a pace, it had a tempo to it, and it keeps it moving. So let's keep going. And when it jumps out, we'll fix it.
With my brother, probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
So what I'm thinking, again, another change, because then we were seeing him at 10 years old. Then he's kind of back to 4 or 5. Why don't we try that dip to white? So the clips we're seeing are here. This is an old clip we ended up not using. So if I make it invisible, you'll see there actually is something under there and we didn't use it. So we don't need it. So let's highlight the clips, press and hold Alt again. That'll get rid of those. And let's do it one more time. And that allows us to transition. So right here, we're going to try our dip to white. And this is really simple stuff. It's not that hard, but when you do it right, it adds up to being very powerful. Now for dip to whites, I usually like to do them really quick. So let's try 13 frames. And let's see how this looks for these two transitions.
When I was around the game and started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball. Like
I usually like to do 10 for a dip to white, so let's try that. It is just not liking even numbers today. And this can happen based on the number of frames you have before or after your clip truly ends, so keep that in mind. Probably doesn't have that many to go to in that clip, so we'll use 9, so let's see what that looks like.
Around the game and started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball
Nice.
like 4 or 5 years old, so started up really, really young.
So what we have here, these are actually the shots that we dragged over here to kind of see if they worked. So here's what you can do, because you never know. At some point we may say, hey, let's put another drone shot in there. Instead of getting rid of those, because once you delete them, you have to find them and trim them again, right? What I usually like to do is highlight them, use Alt, press up, and just move these kind of way above what we know anything is, and then make that track invisible. So now you won't see them, but if you need them, they're right there. And if you were to drag it down, you'd see it. There's another pro tip for you. I'll make an animation one of these days. It won't be today, but I'll make an animation one of these days for pro tips. For more Premiere Pro tutorials, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and make sure to ring the notification bell. And as soon as the next volume is uploaded, you'll find the link in the description.